thanks so much. I didn't know they were doing parking lot floggings. Usually you have to pay extra for that kind of thing. But we'll go ahead and get started here today. So what I'm going to talk about today is kind of the way that we perceive threat actors moving and the behaviors of threat actors that we see changing on a daily basis. Some of the guys in here are already going to be familiar with this. I work pretty closely with them. A couple of disclaimers to start with. So I do work for CrowdStrike, who has an office here in St. Louis, with a few of the guys who are attending this. I'm not here in that official capacity today, so everything that you see is open source intelligence, so to speak. So if you see something and you think it describes a breach that you know about or a breach that you've seen, it doesn't. Okay, this is all stuff that is just kind of vague, and it's maybe several intrusions kind of mashed together and things like that. So again, this is all open source intelligence, and it's not specifically describing any one thing. There's a lot of sensitivity surrounding the adversary we're going to talk about today because they're very different, and they're very talented, and they've done a lot of very scary things. So with that, we'll just go ahead and dive right in. So my name is Dylan Barker. I'm a principal analyst at CrowdStrike on the Falcon Complete team. That is, for those of you who don't know, basically the IR service, the managed detection response for CrowdStrike. So we get to see a lot of very cool things. Some of you may have that at your company. Basically, we just go in and manage detections for you. And as a result of that, we have a lot of visibility into different adversarial tactics. Been in the industry for about 14 years now. I'm the author of Malware Analysis Techniques. I gave a talk here at B-Sides STL a couple of years ago with one of my good friends, Quentin Bowen, about that book. If you would like a copy of it, I don't have any with me, unlike the last guy, but I'm happy to provide you an ebook if you would like that. Various alphabet soup, including LMNOP, not important, not why we're here today. So the adversary that I want to talk about today is called Scattered Spider. Some of you guys may have heard about them. They also go by UNC 3944, Octopus or Roasted Octopus, and they have loose ties to a group called Lapsus. So some of the things that we see today really started with the group Lapsus a couple of years ago. That group, what they did, a lot of them were what you'd call disgruntled employees who maybe sold their credentials to another threat actor, or maybe joined Lapsus and decided, hey, I'm going to use these existing credentials that I have with my company to help facilitate some malicious action, right? Those kinds of things. These guys, however, we're not really sure who they are. We don't really know. What we do know about them is that they're targeted big game hunters. So that is to say, they know who they want to go after. They target specific industries. So things like hospitality, that's been in the news lately. Things like manufacturing and things like telco. They'll go after these segments one at a time, right? So they may say, hey, it's telco season. We're going to go to them because we want to specifically target, let's say, SIM swapping capabilities. So we're going to go target 4 different telecommunications companies in order to obtain that capability, and that's going to make it easier for us to target manufacturing later down the line. They're very, very good at these things, and they're very, very fast. They operate at an extreme operational tempo. So CrowdStrike's threat hunting report this year has the lowest time to objective ever for an adversary. The current time is 79 minutes, right? We call that breakout time. So from the time an adversary obtains that initial foothold, that initial access, whether it be through compromised credentials, whether it be through an exploited service, you have 79 minutes from that point until the adversary begins moving laterally and performing action on objective, whether that's exfiltrating data, whether that's establishing a foothold to do things like looking for IP in the network. You know, China Nexus adversaries are often doing that. They'll maintain these access for years and years. But the point is that you have 79 minutes, generally speaking. These guys, you have less than that. You've got about 5 minutes at the most. We have seen this threat actor go from 0 to 60. That is to say, they are totally done. They've already ransomed the environment, exfilled all your data in 7 hours. This adversary is very, very fast. If you have any suspicion this adversary is in your environment, you have somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 minutes to adequately respond before it's absolutely irreversible damage. And you have to go total war scorched earth on them. They're absolutely gifted social engineers. One thing that we think we know about these adversaries, and some of this is speculation, we think we know that they're based in the UK and the US and somewhere between 19 and 22 years old. Because of this, they don't really stand out, right? It's not like an Eastern European threat actor where they're going to call and they're going to say, "Hello, my name is Piggy. I would like my password reset." It's not like that. These guys are going to call. They're going to sound just like me and you. And they're going to be very convincing, right? They're going to know things about the company that's going to lend credence. They're going to make jokes, these kinds of things that are going to make them seem very friendly, and they're going to make them seem like your friends. I have literally been on a call with a systems administrator while the help desk received a call that was claiming to be that systems administrator and asked for his password to be reset. These guys are very, very good. And that help desk went and reset that password, or tried to, before we stopped them. They are also very talented systems administrators, which leads some to speculate that these guys may be disgruntled employees that have been laid off, things like that. As we all know, the tech industry has faced a little bit of hardship this year. So there have been some layoffs in multiple areas of the tech sector. So based on the behaviors that we see, some folks think that perhaps these guys are ex-tech employees or tech employees trying to supplement their income, things like that. And then finally, last but not least, they're an alpha affiliate, or Black Cat ransomware, if you guys are familiar with that. Kind of shot off of Black Basta there at the end of 2021, 2022, somewhere in that neighborhood. And one thing you need to know about Black Cat and Black Basta and that entire strain of ransomware families is that it's not Windows specific, right? These guys have gone beyond that, and they've developed things to specifically target ESXi and Linux. Because as we all know here, right, as technical people, the world doesn't solely run on Windows. It also runs on Linux, and 90% of corporate infrastructure and hypervisors are Linux or Unix based. So these guys saw that opportunity and they took it. So one thing I want to walk through is kind of a kill chain comparison of what makes these guys different. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 different adversaries today. I want to talk about Graceful Spider. You guys are probably familiar with them. They also go by TA505 or Gold Lotus, something like that, I think. Those guys are responsible for Clop ransomware, if you know anything about that. They are also responsible for the recent MoveIt attacks. So statistically speaking, somebody here in this room has had to respond to the MoveIt attacks. The state of Missouri probably sent you a letter because they were affected by it. So those are the guys responsible for that one, based in Eastern Europe. Wizard Spider is the other one I'm going to talk about. Everybody knows who they are. They're responsible for TrickBot. Everybody knows what TrickBot is. Also responsible for Ryuk and Conti ransomware. So what we're going to do is we're going to step through some of the kill chains that each of these adversaries have. We're going to talk about how Scattered Spider is different and why they're so difficult to detect. So this may be a little hard to see, but we'll zoom in on it a little bit and take a look at some of the things that does make Graceful an interesting adversary to work with. So one of the things that you'll see with Graceful Spider is that they're not often one to obtain access by an access broker or phishing, something like that, right? These guys are, I will call them gifted vulnerability researchers, okay? And that was made very apparent with the MoveIt vulnerability. Nobody knew about that. It was a zero-day attack. And before anybody knew anything about it, all the data was already gone and exfilled. They're still working through their list, I think. And in at least one scenario that we've seen, they've moved along the kill chain by exploiting an application and then establishing some really strange stuff in Windows using component object model, or COM. So they executed code on SolarWinds last year, ServU, and then from there they went ahead and leveraged a scheduled task, which was a defrag task, and then pointed that to a CLS ID in the COM part of the registry, and then redirected it to a different CLS ID that they created using a treat-as function, which then compiled code on the fly that just so happened to be Cobalt Strike and executed that, right? So once they had done that, they would dump credentials on that host, used those credentials that they obtained from dumping via run DLL32 or Mimikatz or something like that, or just dumping LSS by a task manager. They would take that, look at those credentials, and then utilize that to move laterally within the environment via remote desktop protocol, WinRM, impact WMI.pi. And then finally, once they had established a large foothold across the environment, they would deploy their clop ransomware. So that's really kind of what is par for the course with Graceful Spider, right? They're going to obtain that initial access via exploiting a public-facing application, and then they're going to do all the things the threat actor does, right? They're going to somehow build Cobalt Strike. They're going to obtain additional credentials. They're going to move laterally across the environment using tooling like Cobalt Strike or remote desktop, and then they're going to deploy their ransomware. It's pretty loud, right? It's pretty loud. If you've got an EDR, you can feel pretty good about this, right? They're going to do some process hollowing. They're going to create some registry run keys, those kinds of things. Those are the kinds of things that we're looking for, right? Okay, great. Their tooling is also something that we can detect, right? So they use a tool called Flawed AMI, which is just kind of a fork of AMI-admin, if you're familiar with that. But they also use quite a lot of malware, right? They use Flawed Grace, Cobalt Strike, STDBot, and Clop. These are all very easily detected malwares. Obviously, everybody struggles with Cobalt Strike a little bit. There's a lot of different ways to use that tool, cut out a Swiss Army knife. But at the end of the day, they are doing malicious things and using malware. And as such, it's fairly reasonably easy to detect them. Here is an example of what that intrusion I was describing looked like from a perspective of the CrowdStrike Falcon EDR. So this actually comes from a blog post written about that by a friend of mine, Tasha Robinson, who is here today, I think. It's very easy to detect this kind of thing. You've got a malicious encoded PowerShell coming off of service host from the SolarWinds service, so very easy to detect. Next, I want to look at Wizard Spider. So these guys have been around for a very long time. TrickBot's been around for a very long time, 15 years at this point, something like that. These guys usually obtain access via either an access broker, something exposed outside, or phishing is their big one, right? So they'll send phishing emails. You'll get something like Bazaar Loader or TrickBot from that, and then it'll sit there forever and ever and ever. And then finally, once they get to your company, they're going to use that foothold to begin moving laterally. Once they've obtained that initial access, they're going to do much of the same things Graceful would do. They're going to use PowerShell. They're going to use the Windows command shell. They're going to create local accounts for persistence. They're going to create scheduled tasks. They're going to move along this kill chain, modify the registry, attempt to disable your EDR products, things like that. And then they're going to do things for credential dumping to move laterally, like looking at the SAM hives, touching ntds.did on your domain controllers, dumping LSAS memory, doing a DC sync with Mimikatz, doing credential stuffing attacks across your endpoints. Once they've done that and they've obtained those credentials in a very loud fashion, as we all know, Mimikatz is very loud. If your EDR can't detect that, then you're probably doing something wrong. If you can't detect credential dumping in your environment, you should really assess your security posture. Finally, they're going to basically exfiltrate data over cloud storage. So they're going to find whatever it is that's valuable to you. Let's say you have a rewards program for your customers, you store customer data, social security numbers, things like that. They're going to exfiltrate all that up. And then finally, once they've all got a copy, a nice, clean, good copy, they're going to run whatever ransomware flavor of the month that Wizard Spider has. So previously, they used Ryuk. That one was really, really bad. We saw a lot of that for a really long time, somewhere around 2020, 2019. And then eventually they moved to Conti, right? Now, one thing I want to touch on is the Conti playbook, because that was kind of a big deal when that leaked, right? It told you pretty much exactly how these guys operated, and a lot of this map is because the Conti playbook leaked. But one of the things that was really different, it was kind of prescient for the way things were heading, was the fact that Wizard Spider recommended using an RMM tool instead of Cobalt Strike. So for all of their affiliates, they were like, instead of using Cobalt Strike or interpreter or whatever shit malware you have, just install a Terra. Just use that. Does all the same things, right? And it's not detected because it's a legitimate tool. So that was kind of a revelation, right? We got a lot of those pushes from our Overwatch threat hunting team over the next week after that was leaked, because we were like, holy shit, look at all these RMM tools that are out here that are being used by a malicious threat actor. If only we had known then the way that things were going. So again, we want to take a look at some of the tooling that was used by Wizard Spider. They're not really defunct at this point. They're still around, but they're not nearly as active as they have been. One of the things that I think we've noticed at CrowdStrike with our visibility is that a lot of these Eastern European threat actors have kind of died down due to the situation geopolitically in Ukraine and Russia. So as to whether or not these guys are even still alive is really anybody's guess, but they're much quieter than they have been, we'll put it that way. So these guys use TrickBot, Rike, Cobalt Strike, Conti, and Bizarre Loader. So those are all easily detected malware. And you can see this is an example intrusion from Wizard Spider. This is actually a screenshot that I used in my book, I believe, of a TrickBot infection, and it is super loud, right? So you can see that basically the user is executing run DLL32 by a likely malicious shortcut that came in an email. And then it's coming back and injecting into Process Explorer, and then it's injecting into like a billion different processes over here. Very loud, very easy to detect. Are our detections perfect for that? No. There are always times that malware is going to slip by, but at the end of the day, it was malware, right? That was how they obtained their initial foothold, and so as such, it makes them easy to detect and fairly easy to respond to. These guys are very persistent, though, so you need to make sure that you respond adequately. So that finally brings me to Scattered Spider and what their map looks like. So if we take a look at this, and I realize that the text is garbled and garbage, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I think the first thing that you'll notice is that the map itself is much, much bigger. So if we want to talk a little bit about the way that Scattered Spider obtains initial access, it's not like the other guys necessarily, not really. So they don't send malware. When they send a fish, it doesn't have a zip file in it. There's nothing that says, hey, please open this VBA script that's compressed with password, things like that. That's not how they obtain initial access. If they do fish you, they send you a link that's like maybe 1 or 2 characters away from your legitimate company domain. When you navigate to it, it looks just like your company domain. They take everything that they can, slap it on there, make it super high quality, everything's spelled correctly, perfect, and it's got a credential prompt to sign in. And you do that, it redirects you to the legitimate resource, and then sends your credentials back to them. That's if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, what they're going to do is they're going to take a look at your company's profile. They're going to find a systems administrator, going to look him up on LinkedIn, they're going to learn about his life, learn about his kids, everything that they can, and then they're going to call your help desk. And they're going to say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I need my password reset, I just locked myself out. I'm a sysadmin here at whatever company. And the help desk guy, being very helpful to his sysadmin and wanting to become a sysadmin later, is going to say, sure thing, bud. I'm going to go ahead and reset your password for you. Here it is. You ready? Get yourself a paper and pen. And I've seen them do that like 3 or 4 times easily. And they'll just get that system's admin password and go to town, basically. The first thing that they're going to target is cloud. Once they have those valid accounts, they're going to log into your Azure, and they're going to start spinning up their own boxes. So once they do that, they're probably going to download a bunch of cloud administration tooling, like the Google Cloud Console, and then they're going to start enumerating all of your cloud resources, be it your Azure AD, things like that. Because on-prem stuff is generally pretty well secured, but the cloud stuff, nobody understands it well enough to secure it, not right now. And most of the time, that's where they're going to get the majority of their initial data. So once they've obtained that, they're going to establish persistence. the most interesting way I've seen them establish persistence is once they have those credentials, they're able to log in. They're actually going to go and delete the original sysadmin's phone number and then their MFA, and then they're going to add their own phone number. So that anytime, if the sysadmin notices his password's been changed, he's going to go ahead and change it back. But they're still going to have access because they've got their phone number and MFA, so they can recover his password. Let's see. After that, they're likely going to attempt to get other passwords because eventually, like that sysadmin is going to notice that his password is bad and he's going to start suspecting something, right? So they're going to go dump ntds.did. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, that's easy. I can detect that. I know how to detect credential dumping, and that's a very sensitive file, so I can write a detection for that. Well, can you write a detection for it if they turn off the domain controller from the root console of the hypervisor and then mount the disk and pull it that way? No, you can't. Nobody can. Because guess what? The SXI doesn't have any EDR. There's no way to detect that. So they're going to go ahead and grab all of those credentials as well. Then they're going to spin up another domain controller, set up federated access, and maintain access into your domain that way by having federated sign-on through Okta from their own domain. Eventually, they're going to disable the cloud logs, things like that, so that you can't detect them. They're going to look for existing RMs in your environment, so like Screen Connect, things like that. And then they're going to use those tools that you already use. So let's say your company uses LogMeIn. They're going to compromise your LogMeIn server. They're going to compromise your Screen Connect server. And then they're going to use that existing tooling in your environment to look for things that they want to steal, to look for things that they want to exfiltrate. And you're not going to be able to detect it because those are tools you already use, and it's a valid sysadmin account. Why would you suspect a valid sysadmin account using a tool that you use in your environment as being malicious? They're going to compromise things like password managers. I've seen companies use things like, be it 1Password or any one of these hosted password managers, be it Thycotic or whatever. They're going to go for those two. The other thing that they really, really enjoy doing, and I've alluded to this a little bit already, is going for hypervisors, right? The hypervisors contain all of the hosts in the environment. So specifically VMware ESXi, they really seem to know how to use that really well. So we'll often find them downloading things like PowerCLI and then using that in a systems administrator capacity to obtain access, suspend VMs, look at the disks in raw offline form, because nobody's going to find exfil if you're doing it raw offline and on a host that you just spun up, right? So they come in, they create their own VMs, they spin down your VMs just temporarily for maintenance or whatever. Set them to a maintenance state, mount their disks, and then look at the contents using their own VM that doesn't have an EDR. So once they've done all of that stuff, they're going to eventually exfil all of that. So we've seen them use rclone in the past. They're getting better than that now. They're using different tools like Google Drive and things of that nature, right? Things that, again, don't raise any alarm bells. Things that look like this normal user behavior. And then finally, on their way out the door, they're going to go to your hypervisors, and they're going to deploy ransomware. They're going to deploy Black Hat. They don't really deploy it on endpoints, interestingly. They don't really seem to care about endpoints. But on their way out the door, once they've already gotten what they want, and they are going to look for very high-value data like, let's say, user data, a number of things. I've got a lot of examples, and none of them I can talk about, but they're going to look for the highest value data for you, and they're going to exfiltrate it. And then, as they're walking out the door, they're going to say, oh, by the way, fuck you, ransomware. That's just how these guys work. So you may be wondering why I don't have a nice, pretty image over here of what one of these intrusions look like. It's because you can't detect it. You can't. Your EDR is not going to pick it up. Your EDR is not good enough. You've got to look at the identities. You cannot just be looking at heuristics and behavior. So the only things that they use that are really detectable are the ransomware. And then by the time you detect that, you're already done with your ass. They don't want you. They don't care if you see them. They use things like Rustdesk, LogMeIn, Atera, Splashtop, whatever you're using, they're using. If they notice that you like Screen Connect, they like Screen Connect too. If they notice you like LogMeIn, sure, that's fine. They'll roll with it. They use rclone, as I said, VMware Power CLI, and Connect by Screen Connect is a big one just because so many people use it. They use it a lot too. So what can we do to prevent these guys if we can't detect them with our EDR? What controls can we put in place? First one is MFA, right? These guys have SIM swapping capabilities. They're very, very good at it. They targeted like 4 or 5 worldwide telcos in order to obtain this capability, and they use the hell out of it. So when you're setting up MFA, no SMS, no voice, and no push notifications. Push notifications suck ass, okay? What they're going to do is they're going to get access to valid credentials, and they're going to say push, 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 until Stacy from accounting says, fine, fuck it, and just accepts the push. And then they're in. That's all they need. And they're going to do that to every one of your users. I've seen them send thousands and thousands of push notifications to a single user until they just gave up. Use UB keys. Use number matching. Those are the only two that you should be using. As soon as these guys started becoming prolific, I logged into my Okta SSO, unenrolled my phone. Do not use Duo. Do not. Use number matching or use a UB key. That's it. Least privilege. I know this one is super common, right? But you have to have it. Okay? Your end users do not need access to VMware ESXi. Do they? There's like 2 people in your org who should have access to that, especially root, right? Make sure you're practicing least privilege. I shouldn't have to say it, but I do because there's privilege creep, and it just happens. That's how it is. RBAC. Same idea, right? Role-based access control. Peggy from accounting doesn't need to be root to ESXi. Easy as that. She doesn't need to be able to remote desktop to a domain controller. Your sysadmins need to be able to RDP to a domain controller, but every time they do, there should be an MFA push. Well, not a push. A YubiKey prompt, right? Network-based as well. You need to be using 802.1x, those kinds of things. So with 802.1x, you can do things like, if I'm on this Ethernet jack, I get XYZ VLAN, and then I can access, the VMware root port, or then I can access iDRAC. But these things need to be very tightly controlled, right? You don't need to be able to access iDRAC from every port on the corporate network. Social engineering. Help desk is ScatterSpider's best friend. Keep it in-house. No password resets for MSPs, if you can swing that. I know MSPs and MSSPs have become increasingly popular, and we rely on them for a lot of the day-in, day-out, very boring stuff. But honestly, it's terrible because MSPs are 10 times more likely to not recognize a person and then just say, fuck it, and just reset their password. And require photo ID for password reset requests. I know that sounds insane, right? Like, we should be identifying these people, we should know these people, but this is not common practice. It's just not. You need to be requiring photo identification for these password resets, and people just aren't. Phishing, you need to be able to detect typo squatting. You need to have great user training surrounding phishing. I know everybody does that, and everybody says that, but it is something that you need to focus on. And an identity protection solution, right? CrowdStrike's got one, but there's a number of other ones. You just need one, right? It doesn't have to be that one. Technical controls. RMM limitations. Limit what RMM you have. Okay? If you use Screen Connect, use Screen Connect. Don't use anything else. That's going to help alert you. So if they start doing Fleet Deck deployment or Rustdesk, something like that, you're going to be able to detect it a little bit quicker. Use your EDR product to enforce that, or use Windows GPO. You can do that. You can set only RMMs or certain programs to be able to execute and ban other ones in Windows GPO. VMware hardening. As I said, they absolutely love VMware. So you need to do everything you can to prevent them from getting into that. So network segmentation, like we talked about, code signing enforcement, complex root passwords, no outbound internet, and any time there's a config change, like enabling SSH, something like that, you need to be getting an alert for it. monitor those environments very, very heavily. And finally, lull bin limitations. We've talked about Peggy a lot, picked on her, but does she need PowerShell? Probably not. So maybe put some restrictions in place for these accounts that they can't run PowerShell, they can't run some of these common systems administration tools. That's really going to hamper Scattered's activity, and it's a control I highly recommend. If I just had to pick three, it would be these, right? MFA, UV keys and number matching, photo ID for all access requests, and then harden that VMware. Those are the three that are going to get you the farthest with these guys. It's going to make it a real pain in the ass. And if you can make it a pain in the ass for the first 3 hours, these guys are going to go away. You've got to make it as hard as possible on them. They move so quickly that if you can irritate them, they're not going to bother anymore. So, in conclusion, there are a couple of things that you need to know about these guys, and this is how you win, right? Your phone, it's not a factor in 2FA. It should not be. Your EDR alone is not enough to detect these guys. You won't detect this behavior. It's not malware. Hypervisors, super high-value targets. You need to be securing them like the high-value targets that they are. If you suspect Scattered, your only way out is absolutely scorched earth and total war. Every time you have a mildly suspicious account, or you have an inkling of what they might be doing, you need to be locking every account. Force full domain password resets, double tap KRB, TGT, the whole 9 yards. Just lock it down, because if you don't, they're going to get around you. There are no half measures with these guys. You got to go total war. And you need to card your users like you run a liquor store on a college campus. Every time somebody asks for anything from you, especially if you suspect Scattered, you need to be getting an ID, a photo ID from them. If you're on a Zoom bridge and you're talking about your response to these guys, make everybody turn their cameras on. These guys have joined IR bridges just to fuck with the people responding to them, just to mislead them. They have gotten onto people's computers using remote desktop session shadowing and screenshot their chats as they're responding, right? And then they've leaked those chats as they talk about their business response over Microsoft Teams. In these cases, where you suspect this, you need to assume full domain compromise, and you need to move out-of-band communications. That means use Gmail, make a new Gmail, whatever it takes. But these guys they're in deep. If you see them, it's almost too late. There are cases where it isn't, but you need to basically assume full compromise and treat it accordingly. Any questions about anything I've covered today? Yeah. So are you talking about like implementing controls to prevent this or during response? Yeah, I think that's one of those things that we all struggle with in security, right? The answer is you got to have leadership buy-in, and you've got to, as the person enforcing it, you've almost got to have the leader be willing to take it on the nose, right? Say, hey, don't blame me. This is a choice of our leadership. If you have a question about it, you can go see our CISO. A lot of these controls really aren't that bad from a corporate perspective and from a user experience perspective. Some of the RMM stuff I could see probably being a little touchy, but most of the time, these controls are very basic, and you shouldn't get too much pushback, I wouldn't think. Any other questions? Sure. Yeah, I think, phone call, text support, like for a password reset, to me, that's unacceptable, right? You can't authenticate that person over a phone call. You can't authenticate that person. I'm thinking about this from like a mega corporate perspective. Like if you work in an office with 3 people, you're probably going to be able to tell that person about their voice. But if you don't and you're at a very large corporation, I would highly suggest that you move to a video ID sort of thing. Sure. So you're assuming that that's kind of an IT question, I think. Yeah, but you need to have these processes very clearly defined, right? So something like the way that we do it, for instance, is like FaceTime, right? If I go tomorrow and I can't get into my account, I'm going to have my manager. I'm going to call him and I'm going to say, "Hello, manager. I can't get into my stuff." And then IT is going to FaceTime me or Google Hangouts me and validate me, and I do have to show ID, right? That's how CrowdStrike does it. I have to get on a video call with IT and show my ID. If I can't, shit out of luck. And that's fine. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great practice, right? Because now, granted, if these guys get any account, they're going to abuse the fuck out of it. But for privileged accounts, the way that I would do it is have somebody like, their manager approve it, or perhaps even, up to like a director level. Because at that point it's gone through those significant validations that this is the legitimate user. I still think you need to be validating with ID, things like that, because you shouldn't be using shared accounts, right? Everybody should have their own privileged account if they require one. Does that answer that question? Cool. Yeah. Well, you got to think. Number matching wise, it's fine, right? If you've got Duo and it's asking you to type like 136942, that's fine. That's fine. But no, the SIM swapping, so the phone call, the SMS, SMS specifically is very vulnerable to it. But voice is as well. So it's really those things that we're concerned about, right? If I'm getting push fatigue, it's really easy for a slip of the thumb on that touchscreen device to just go ahead and approve them and log them right in. And then again with the SIM swapping, it's just not a good solution. And if you want to make sure that nobody does it accidentally, UBBs, great. Because your UBB is not going to light up when Scattered attempts to sign in from wherever the hell they are. Anybody else? Awesome. Well, I thank you guys so much for your time today. I would love nothing more than to make life really fucking hard for these guys and make it impossible for them to do this crap that I've seen them do. So if you take anything away from being here today, implement these controls, please make their life very, very difficult. And thanks so much for attending.